Hello, this is Pei Zhang. This is our fourth presentation for this course. We'll be covering the dynamic nature of medical communication. Medical communication is not limited to written interaction among researchers in highly specialized research journals. Rather, it can be seen as a rich, dynamic continuum moving from research articles to educational television documentary on relevant health topics or news in the press about health and medicine. In fact, medical knowledge is generated by a variety of participants: researchers, physicians, surgeons, nurses, caregivers, patients, patients' family members, health managers, health policymakers, medical teachers, medical students, and so forth. Furthermore, medical knowledge may be presented in many different ways: formal or informal, specialized or popular, oral or written. Becoming aware of the dynamism and complexity of medical communication is a key element for a successful career as a medical translator. Top-down and bottom-up. Medical research is conducted as a response to several types of needs: pharmaceutical companies wishing to commercialize new drugs, health authorities wishing to find solutions to general health problems, physicians and patients wishing to improve the treatment of diseases, and so forth. New knowledge is generated by researchers in laboratories and hospitals and then distributed top-down so that it can benefit patients, companies, and the general public. However, medical knowledge is also generated bottom-up. Much of the information contained in patients' history comes from patients themselves. Think of the various consultations patients may have before being diagnosed, interviews in which they provide medical information of vital importance to the physician, or questionnaires patients answer in population studies, or forms patients have to complete in order to apply for services. All of these are examples of how medical knowledge and communication also flows bottom up. Specialized and popular. The transmission of medical knowledge takes place in a wide range of situations, from highly specialized research papers communicating the results of a study to newspaper articles giving an account of or commenting on a given discovery, invention, or controversy in the medical and health sectors. Between the research article and the newspaper article, there is a wide spectrum of communicative situations of decreasing degrees of specialization. Formal or informal. Formal communication in the medical field might involve published papers or presentations at conferences. But like any other social activity, medicine involves a wide variety of communicative practices, many of which take place in informal situations. Researchers talk to each other in order to share information of all kinds, plan experiments, comment on results, and so on. Likewise, physicians in hospitals also talk to each other about patients or write informal notes to remember things. Patients also express themselves informally when they consult their consultants, or when they talk to other patients who suffer from the same illness. These are just a few examples of many informal situations in which medical communication takes place. Oral and written. Medical knowledge can be generated and communicated not only in written form but also orally. When a patient and a physician exchange information in the consulting room, or when researchers swap ideas in the laboratory or the clinic or during a coffee break at a conference, they're all producing and communicating medical knowledge orally. That knowledge will probably be stored and further elaborated in written form. In the first case, the patient's comments may be written down and stored in his or her clinical history. In the second case, many of the oral interchanges between the investigators of a research team will be developed further in the form of a laboratory report, which in its turn may give rise to a conference presentation, and if the research is relevant enough, to an article published in a specialized journal. Traditionally, medical language has been regarded in the same way as any other kind of scientific language: objective, neutral, and non-rhetorical, whose only function was to transmit information, a so-called referential function. In this tradition, received image of medical language, words, and texts are detached from society and from the individual. As a consequence, they contain no cultural or ideological references and have a uniform and impersonal style. Furthermore, each concept is represented by one and only one term, in the jargon of linguists, univocal, and concepts are precise and remain stable and unchanging over time. Medical texts may include characteristics of different text types, degrees of formality, and both a subjective and objective orientation. The so-called scientific objectivity may be a controversial issue, comes across clearly in the choice of words or expressions motivated by political correction, or in the search for positive connotations in the following guidelines for authors, similar to those for most publications. It is easy to mix fact and opinion. Keep the results and discussion separate. Don't overuse italics for emphasis. A page paper with different type styles confuses the eye and interrupts smooth reading. The routine mention of a patient's skin color or ethnic origin is usually superfluous and should appear in the case report only if later addressed in the discussion, or if potentially useful for future studies, as with skin color in a hypertensive population. Do not use the phrase in man. Human is the appropriate alternative. We are accused of dehumanizing patients. Consider the following. Instead of case, use patient. Instead of male or female, use man or woman. Instead of male or female children, use boys or girls. For pediatric populations, use children instead. Our approach to medical knowledge and communication as social activity implies a critical vision of the language. Participants use language to achieve their communicative goals, which are not limited to just transmitting factual information. So, medical language can, and indeed does, carry out a variety of functions. For those who are familiar with the jargon, it is the result of interpersonal interaction, in which individuals communicate with each other from a specific point of view by means of metaphors and a rich variety of rhetorical and stylistic resources. In addition, medical language contains cultural and ideological elements. This is especially visible in the language used to communicate with patients. As far as terminology is concerned, polysemy, synonymy, and conceptual variation are at least as common as univocal, precise, and stable terms. How does all this affect medical translators and the way they work? Well, first and foremost, it should indicate that translators bear in mind who is likely to read their translations and why.